Have you ever opened a restaurant menu and felt that something looks strangely polished, even before you knew why? The prices are still there, but one familiar cue is missing. Instead of seeing $18, you may only see 18, and that tiny absence changes the mood of the page. That missing currency mark can seem like a minimalist design choice, but restaurants rarely remove it by accident. In menu design, small visual decisions do real psychological work. The goal is not to hide the price. The goal is to make the act of spending feel less sharp in the moment of choosing. A currency symbol does more than identify money. It signals cost immediately and explicitly. The instant your eye catches a dollar sign, pound sign, or euro mark, your brain moves from appetite toward calculation, and that shift can interrupt the feeling a restaurant is trying to build. Restaurants want you thinking about the meal first, the atmosphere, the flavors, the occasion, and the plate that might arrive at your table. If the menu feels too much like a bill, the experience becomes colder. Softer price presentation helps keep the emotional focus on enjoyment a little longer. This matters because menus are not neutral documents. They are part of hospitality design. The symbols, spacing, alignment, and typography all help tell your brain what kind of experience this place is offering, and a hard money cue can break that illusion faster than people realize. The real tension is simple. A restaurant would rather have you imagine pasta, steak, dessert, and maybe one more drink than jump straight into arithmetic. Once the mind starts comparing numbers too aggressively, the menu stops feeling like an invitation and starts feeling like a spreadsheet. Removing the symbol does not make the number disappear. You still see the price, and you can still judge whether it feels high. But without the most obvious money marker, the number can sit more quietly on the page, letting the dish description carry more of the emotional weight. That is why this tactic shows up most often in places that care deeply about atmosphere. The menu is not just a list of options. It behaves like part of the room, just like the lighting, the tableware, the pacing of service, and the overall tone of the dining experience. When those elements work together, the guest stays in a more relaxed sensory mindset. Candlelight, texture, sound, and presentation all encourage you to feel the meal before you calculate it. A loud price format can pull you out of that state, which is exactly what designers are trying to avoid. So the design softens the money reminder without removing honesty. The price remains visible, but the surrounding page stops shouting it. That quieter treatment protects the mood of the meal, which is often more valuable to a restaurant than forcing the customer to confront cost too bluntly. This is an important distinction. The strategy is not deception. Good menu design still keeps the number readable and useful. What changes is emphasis. Instead of letting the price dominate the eye, the layout nudges the guest to notice the dish, then the number, instead of the other way around. In restaurants that trade on mood, that difference matters. A fine dining room, a boutique hotel restaurant, or a carefully styled cafe wants the menu to feel like one more refined object in the space. The calmer the page feels, the easier it is for the price to seem like part of the experience. Think about how many small influences are already working before you order. Lighting changes comfort. Music shapes pace. Glassware, linens, and the server's rhythm all create expectations. The menu belongs to that same system, which means its price formatting is another design lever, not just a bookkeeping detail. If a page is packed with currency signs, dotted leader lines, long decimals, or boxed price columns, that design can snap people back into budget mode. It reminds the guest over and over that every choice is a transaction, and that is exactly the sensation many restaurants are trying to soften. Once the eye starts scanning a menu like a calculator, the emotional spell weakens. Guests compare columns instead of imagining taste. They jump to the cheapest option instead of lingering on what sounds memorable, indulgent, or worth the moment, and that changes what gets ordered. That is why many menu designers prefer plain numbers, generous spacing, and fewer visual reminders that every plate is a purchase. Cleaner formatting keeps the page elegant, but it also slows aggressive price comparison just enough to let appetite, curiosity, and descriptive language do more work. There is a long menu engineering tradition behind this. Hospitality researchers and consultants have argued for years that ordering behavior is influenced by layout, language, position, and visual framing. Price style is only one part of the system, but it is one of the easiest parts to tune. The research is not magic, and it does not turn guests into puppets. But restaurants do not need mind control. They only need small nudges that, repeated across many tables, can shift attention toward higher margin items, richer descriptions, or combinations that feel more rewarding in the moment. When prices sit more softly beside the dish, the guest is more likely to notice the appeal first. The food stays emotionally in front, the number still exists, but it arrives a beat later, after the plate, ingredients, and overall experience have already had a chance to make their case. That subtle effect is the whole point. A restaurant does not need every diner to stop caring about price. It only needs to reduce friction a little. If hesitation becomes slightly softer, the page has done its job, and the guest may stay in an ordering mindset instead of a defensive one. This is how many menu choices work. Not through one dramatic trick, but through several small pressures acting together. A cleaner price, a better description, a warmer table setting, and a thoughtful layout can each seem minor on their own. Yet together they gently shape what feels attractive or easy to choose. Notice how many modern menus also remove dotted leader lines. Those dotted paths can make the page feel like an old bill, forcing the eye to travel mechanically from dish to number. When they disappear, the design feels calmer, and the price can live closer to the description without pulling so much attention. That closer placement matters. Instead of floating at the far edge like an invoice total, the number becomes one element inside the dish block. The menu stops encouraging pure column scanning and starts encouraging a slower read, where the plate itself gets a little more mental space. The result often feels more premium, even when the food itself is unchanged. Wide margins, balanced type, and quieter pricing make the menu seem intentional. That premium feeling can influence how people interpret value, because presentation changes expectations before the first bite ever arrives. The opposite is also true. When every price lines up in a perfect vertical lane, the page practically invites spreadsheet behavior. Guests can skim straight down looking for the cheapest safe choice, and that is rarely the kind of reading experience a restaurant wants to encourage for its better items. Blended pricing shifts the sequence of attention. Instead of asking, "What costs least?" the page first asks, "What sounds good?" That subtle reordering matters because imagination usually increases willingness to spend more than arithmetic does, especially when the restaurant is selling mood as much as food. Descriptive language deepens that effect. Truffle butter, wood fire, slow braise, house-made sauce, fresh herbs, or a carefully described dessert all create sensory pictures. Once the brain starts tasting the idea of the meal, the price arrives in a very different emotional context than it would on a plain list. That is one reason desserts, cocktails, appetizers, and specials often benefit from this style. These are the items most improved by emotion, indulgence, and appetite. A softer price cue lets the language and imagery do more of the persuasion, which can make higher margin add-ons feel easier to justify. In that moment, the order feels less like budgeting and more like participating in the evening. The restaurant wants the choice to feel like part of the experience itself. Cleaner pricing supports that by reducing the visual sting of spending exactly when the guest is deciding how fully to lean into the meal. What started in fine dining did not stay there. The idea spread into hotel restaurants, cafes, and even more casual formats, because the underlying logic works anywhere a business wants spending to feel smooth, elegant, and slightly less transactional. The same principle now appears in digital ordering too. On tablets, apps, and modern menu screens, designers often keep price formatting plain and visually light. Even when the surface changes from paper to glass, the goal stays similar: reduce friction, keep attention on the dish, and avoid overemphasizing cost. There is another layer here, and it is the balancing act between persuasion and clarity. The price must remain honest and readable. If the design hides too much, trust erodes. So good menu design lives in the middle, where the number is easy enough to find but not strong enough to dominate the page. That is why a simple 18 usually feels cleaner than 18.00, and cleaner still than 18 with a full currency sign attached. Each extra symbol makes the number feel more formal, more financial, and more like a warning. Simpler formatting makes the same value feel quieter without changing the amount. On the surface, it looks like elegant minimalism. Underneath, it is active psychology. The menu is deciding how loudly the price should speak compared with the food, the room, and the moment. That hidden balance is what makes such a small design choice surprisingly powerful. Of course, this is not universal. Some restaurants need immediate clarity more than mood. In those places, explicit pricing may be the right choice, and the cleaner symbol approach would work less well or even feel confusing to guests who want instant certainty. Fast food boards, airport cafes, tourist-heavy spots, and other highly price-sensitive environments often prioritize speed and clarity. Their guests may be comparing quickly, ordering under time pressure, or translating expectations across different contexts, so strong explicit pricing makes more sense there. Country rules matter too. Taxes, service charges, multiple currencies, and local expectations can all change how menus are designed. In some places, all-in pricing is normal. In others, extra fees or service conventions complicate the visual language, which means the clean no-symbol approach is not equally practical everywhere. And even where it is used, restaurants are not betting everything on one missing symbol. They are stacking small influences: lighting, descriptions, plate size, specials, server recommendations, and prices that whisper instead of shout. The menu is only one part of a larger persuasion system. That is the key phrase to remember. Menu prices are being asked to whisper, not yell. They still communicate the number, but they do it in a way that protects the emotional flow of ordering. The guest keeps thinking about what sounds good, instead of being dragged too early into the mechanics of paying. So the next time you see a menu that says 24 instead of 24 with a currency sign, look a little closer. That missing symbol is doing a quiet job. It is softening the visual sting of price, protecting the mood of the meal, and helping the menu behave less like a bill and more like an invitation.